Let's talk about something really important. Are elderberries poisonous? So, in the world of plants and foraging and herbalism, the word poisonous gets thrown around for a lot of different plants, and there is no nuance in how we use the word. So, we can use the word poisonous for something that can give you an allergic reaction, a rash. We can use the word poisonous for something that you can touch or ingest that can cause a reaction. We use the word poison for something that can make you slightly nauseous or something that can kill you. And so, not all poison is created equal. And as we know, the poison is always in the dose, regardless of what kind of poison we're talking about. And so, when we start to talk about elderberries, it is elderberry season. I've been harvesting and processing, and in all of the like herbal forums and plant forums that I'm in, I see comments almost every day of people warning others, oh, if you don't boil the fresh berries for at least 30 minutes, they could kill you, and other claims like that. So let's back it up. One of the most famous references for death by elder is from a modern herbal, and this is an early herbal by someone named Mrs. Greaves. And in the section on elder, there's a little mention of an anecdote where two children died from ingesting raw elder root. And if you try to find if there's any sort of medical source for that, it's hard to find. I mean, this was a long time ago, so it might not exist anymore. It might not have even been written down, even if it did happen. And I think there's also, I was able to find, there's a prior record that is transcribed from a native tribe that references the inner bark of elder could be a cause of death in children. And so there's no modern recordings of death by elderberry. The only incident that you're going to find when you look this up is that there was a case where it was 6 or 8 people decided they wanted to fresh press elderberries to get their juice and drink it, but they included leaves and twigs when they pressed the juice, and it was all raw, nothing was cooked. And all of these people experienced nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, intestinal cramps, dizziness. They had to be hospitalized. They were dehydrated, all that stuff, but nobody died. And so, elder does contain compounds that are called cyanogenic glycosides. And these compounds do cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, intestinal cramping. And as we all know, if you have too much of that, you can become dehydrated. And also, just like with anything, the dosing and the exposure in terms of the amount of compounds we're receiving, we're more susceptible when we weigh less because it'll take less plant matter to get us to that toxic level than if we weigh more. And children, by their nature, weigh less. And so children are more vulnerable to getting a dose that might induce some negative issues. Okay, and so, is it possible that this anecdotal evidence of children ingesting raw bark and raw root led to death? It is possible. They would have had to eat a decent amount, but we also don't know which species of elder they were ingesting. And so that's the other thing, is that different species of elder have different amounts of these toxic compounds. And there's a species that doesn't grow here, it's called red elder, and it's highly, highly toxic. And then we have the European species, Sambucus nigra, which has more cyanogenic glycosides than the native species that grows in the U.S., and that would be Sambucus canadensis. Okay, so the species matters, the amount that you're ingesting matters, the part of the plant matters, how much you weigh matters, and so it is generally accepted that the root is going to contain the highest concentration of cyanogenic glycosides, followed by the bark, and then the leaves, and then the berries, and then the flowers. And some sources say the flowers have a small amount, and other sources say the flowers do not contain it, so I'm not sure which one is accurate. But I do know that in the case of working with the flowers, plenty of recipes don't call for heating it, and heat is the method that neutralizes those CNGs, those cyanogenic glycoside compounds. And, so I'm not sure, but different people also have different sensitivities. So, on top of the species and the body weight, you might not be as sensitive as the next person. So maybe you've heard stories of people eating raw elderberries and being fine, and maybe other people have eaten a few raw elderberries and felt nauseous or vomited. Now, medicinally, historically, this emetic property, the property that is purgative, that makes you vomit and have diarrhea, that was sought after, okay? Because purging something out of your body that doesn't need to be there can be a good thing. If you have ingested something else, if you have something in your system that needs to be flushed out, then the medicine was sought after, right? So people would make these teas for purgative purposes intentionally. Now, that being said, we don't see the use of elder root, bark, and leaf as commonly in modern herbalism as you'll see it written in older herbals in terms of how people worked with the medicine. All those things do have medicine beyond just the purgative properties, but more commonly today we see herbalists using elderberries and elderflowers. So the berries, the fresh berries, they do need to be processed in a certain way in order to reduce the amount of CNGs. And so that's going to reduce the likelihood that you're going to experience any sort of ill effect. And so that's why you see in all the recipes for elderberry syrup and things, you're heating and processing the berries. That's why if you purchase commercially dried elderberries, they will have already been dehydrated at high heat, which neutralizes those compounds as well. And so, is elderberry poisonous? Perhaps, but will it kill you? Not necessarily. And it's circumstantial and situational. If a child ingested some root of the red elder, then that is a likely occurrence. Okay, but if you personally harvest some fresh elderberries and process them correctly, then no, you're not going to experience anything like that. Now, if you start experimenting with processing the root, the bark, or the leaves without any training or working with someone who's experienced with knowing how to process that and how to dose it, then you could definitely experience some of those things. Or if you're just popping raw elderberries while you're harvesting and you're sensitive to it, yes. So, like everything, there's a lot of nuance in elderberries, and I think it's important to understand what we're talking about when we talk about poison, because what's in elderberries is not the same compound that is in, say, poison hemlock, right? So it's not affecting us in the same way, and it doesn't mean the same thing in the end result. Where, poison hemlock can shut down the central nervous system, and that's not necessarily what's happening here with elder. So that being said, I just wanted to share some of that information and just to encourage you when you are harvesting, make sure you know what species of elder you're harvesting. So if it's native and in the wild and you're in the US, it's very likely Sambucus canadensis, the native species that's lower in those CNGs. But lots of times you'll find where someone has cultivated the European species, Sambucus nigra, or maybe if you've purchased the plant or the seeds somewhere, it could be the nigra species, which is higher. So in that case, you will need to boil it a little bit longer, heat it a little bit longer than you would the native species. So just knowing which species you're working with. And remember, if you're working with the berries or the flowers, you're de-stemming that. So we're not including stems in our preparation because all those stems are higher in CNGs. So we're de-stemming the plant material. We're using caution. We're following the recipe, knowing the plant we're working with, and especially teaching our children not to consume them raw and not to nibble on other pieces or parts of those trees and plants when they are within reach of our kids. So, bringing a lot of wisdom out to your herbal practice can be very important and can prevent some unpleasant symptoms. So, if you want to go deeper into elder, I have been working really hard and I've compiled a 45-minute online class that goes into the legends behind elder, identifying our native species, understanding elder medicine, which parts of the plant are medicinal in which ways, and then walking you through a few different preparation methods. And I'm including a recipe booklet that's all about elderflowers and elderberries, a 4-page elder monograph, and also a processing guide. And all of that is available over on my Patreon for all tiers, all paying tiers on Patreon. So I have everything starting from $2 a month all the way up to $50 a month. And so if you're already a member over there, you can go and check it out. That's going to be available to you today. And if you're not, but you want access to this class, you can go over and join for as little as $2. You'll be able to watch that video and download all those materials and learn so much more about elder and then ask me whatever questions you have. So hopefully that's helpful and you enjoy your elderberry processing.